on the engagement track, then we will put greater emphasis on the pressure track. Time is short, and we are serious about implementing to the fullest extent that dual-track policy.
The U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Susan Rice. World AIDS Day is being marked today. On Monday, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announced the U.S. will host the 2012 International AIDS Conference, marking the first time the event has been on U.S. soil in 2 decades. In October, the White House lifted a 20-year-old ban that prevented people infected with HIV from entering the country. Meanwhile, a coalition of global AIDS and Africa solidarity groups have released a report card on Obama's first year in office. They gave him a D+. Asia Russell of Health Gap said, quote, "We're disappointed to report that on his first World AIDS Day in office, President Obama has not made good on his promises to increase funding for effective life-saving programs to fight AIDS around the world." A recent report by the Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS and the World Health Organization found about 33 million people are infected with HIV. New HIV infections have been reduced by 17% over the past 8 years. Michelle Sedib is the executive director of UNAIDS.
In terms of death, which is very important, worldwide we are seeing a drops of numbers of new deaths, which is critical during the last 5 years only, with the fact that we have been able, with the support of different programs, to scale up treatment programs, which has been increased by tenfold during the last 5 years. We are seeing a decrease on mortality by 18%.
Michelle Sedib said while the decline in mortality was partly due to HIV prevention programs, more is needed to be done by governments to stop the discrimination of those groups at higher risk of HIV infection, including gay men.
We are seeing a lamentable trends of criminalization of those group of people. Today you have more than 80 countries with homophobic laws, which are just considering that having a different sexual orientation is criminal. And those countries are just arresting those people. So they are hiding themselves. They are fueling epidemic because they are discriminated, because they are stigmatized, and because they cannot have access to services.
In New York, peace activists marched across the Brooklyn Bridge Monday as part of the World March for Peace and Nonviolence. The World March began 60 days ago in New Zealand on October 2nd. Dennis Redmond is the U.S. coordinator of the march.
The march is making 5 proposals, and the 5 have to be looked at together. You can't look at nuclear disarmament without also talking about withdrawal of troops. You can't talk about the ending of war without talking about racial violence, sexual violence, psychological, economic violence. So what we're trying to say is there's a culture of violence, and that's what we really have to transform.
And we end today's headlines with an excerpt from Keith Olbermann's show Countdown last night on MSNBC.
But first, time countdown, top 3 best persons in the world. Dateline Surrey, British Columbia, number 3 best paranoid freedom of speech suppression. Border guards at the Peace Arch on the U.S.-Canada line. Last week they stopped Democracy Now! Host Amy Goodman, had weapon-carrying agents search her car, held her passport for a time. They were afraid she was going to say something dangerous in Canada. Seriously. I mean, in theory, you could stop somebody who was going to advocate violence or the like, but their fear, as Ms. Goodman recounted it, was that she was going to speak out against the upcoming Winter Olympics in Vancouver. Seriously. When she said, no, that wasn't what she was going to talk about in Canada, she said they asked her again 6 times. You guys may want to rethink your priorities, and if you're that desperate to prevent criticism of some Olympic Games, you shouldn't detain a noted commentator and write her scripts for her.
Yeah, that's MSNBC Countdown's Keith Olbermann. And this is